This is a story that took place in the winter, and I was about in the second grade back in Virginia. It was the time when I thought all soup was Campbell's, all tissues were Kleenex, and all sleds were flexible flyers. It was the winter of white speckled streets, abandoned by most automobiles. It was the first time I flew under a full moon and learned that life is as fleeting as a snowfall. Cousin David and I had been sledding down the avenue all afternoon, and we begged our parents for permission to return after dinner and raced against our neighbor gangs. No one thought this was a good idea. Uncle Wick and Daddy had been working on broken pipes all day, and Wick was ready to take David home. Mama said we couldn't see if there was a car crossing the intersection. It was just too dangerous to go out. Well, after much promising and pleading and begging, the adults agreed to let us go make one short run. We grabbed our flyers and walked along the avenue up to Mountain Hill. And the older boys that passed us were taunting us to start up at the top. "Nah, can't go that far tonight," David explained. Said his dad was waiting for him to go home. But I started stumbling uphill as if a magnet pulled me skyward. We slouched past the vague yellow house lights and marched toward the silver-blue flood lamp hovering over the mountaintop. I felt drawn to that moon, drawn like a moth to flame. Sledders rocketed past us faster than I had ever seen a car come down that road, and it kind of made me queasy. I knew we were going to gather momentum faster than shadows. But the moon was so bright, I figured a car could see us and stop. Velocity and car brakes were not part of my concept at the time. There were streams of light, so everything would be fine. The boys who dared us on were stronger and could pull on the flyer's wooden handlebars to make the steel runners flex in the direction they chose. They hollered for us to keep climbing, way up past the starched white stand of oaks, and the higher we went, the brighter the moonlight. It seemed to just hang in the treetops and flood the street like a football field. It was brilliant and magical and magnetizing. I couldn't turn back. I had no idea how long we'd been slugging through the snow and ice, and finally David grabbed my arm, held me tight, and said, "We have to go home." And he snapped me out of my daze. We stretched our bodies out over the sled's logo and grabbed those handles, and then we took flight. The first blocks were intoxicating danger, and then we hit an ice patch, and that sent us both sideways, but we righted it, started downhill once again. Oh, the sound was symphonic, a rapture of steel against ice, ice against wind. We were flying past snow-drenched houses, street lights, and whispering through every intersection without incident. What a feeling, what freedom to sail through diamonds glistening under the moon. When we started on the last block, I saw a car inching across the intersection. I dug my toes into the snow in hopes of slowing down, but it nearly flipped over. Now I was scared. What if I couldn't stop the sled? What if that car just kept going and we ran right into it? David yelled at me to turn right. The only way I could get my sled to go was left, so I went with it, pulling hard on the handlebars and dragging my feet to slow that wooden sled as much as I could. I leaned and just when I thought I was home free around the curve, I saw headlights coming right at me. They seemed far away at first, but as I made the turn, I kept sliding and the car kept coming. And when we both stopped, the icy tire chains kissed my cheek. I lay there almost underneath this car, and I was so thankful my father hadn't seen this. So I jumped up to thank the driver and stared into the face of fury. fury illuminated by the quivering moon. It was a face of terror. It was a face of anger. It was the face of my uncle. "You're lucky the brakes held," he told me. I nodded and waited. I waited weeks for him to tell my parents, but Uncle Wick didn't tell. He let me suffer and suffer and suffer I did. I thought of all the ways I would explain getting glued to the bottom of somebody's tires. I lectured myself. I lectured myself as well as my parents possibly could, and I began to understand that life is fragile, and time replaces everything, even a flexible flyer.